Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. It's Kim here, and today is supposed to be my Sunday tutorial, but one thing led to another, and I needed a couple of days off to do some other stuff, and it just never got done. I was having some technical issues with my videos uploading to YouTube. I don't know if anybody else has that problem, but once in a while it takes really long to load up a video. But regardless, here it is Tuesday, and it is my Sunday tutorial. So today we're starting a new series, and you know, if you've been following along, and we have the one series that's Charms and Dangles, and I've done a few videos for that so far, and now we're going to go into flowers and embellishments for embellishing your journal covers, or maybe some journal pages or tags, depending on how you feel about chunkier or thicker items. But you may use these items to embellish other projects that aren't necessarily junk journal pages, that you might use to enhance a junk journal. For example, you might make a lace bag and want to have some decorated flowers on it that your journal is going to go into, or some sachets. You know, you can use these flowers for an assortment of things, and we're not just going to do flowers, we're going to do other embellishments too. But these embellishments, these floral ones, are really nice to decorate the covers. And I'm not going to show you anything because we are starting from ground zero, because we want to start where anybody who joins this or comes to this series can start right from scratch if they've never made a flower before. So we will advance and progress, and these flowers are going to be amazing and elaborate as we go along. I think even today, some of the seasoned flower makers are going to have a couple of moments where they go, I never thought of that, which is why I love doing these kinds of videos, because I've been doing this kind of stuff for so many years that my thought process just can't keep up, or I should say, my making can't keep up with my thought process. So there is so much that I have to share with you in the future, that we are going to have so much fun with these different series. So I will do the one series today. I'm going to have to miss a couple of weeks because I'm going to be away on holidays. I'm going from New Brunswick all the way to Vancouver, BC. And I'll tell you more about that as we go along. But let's get started with making some flowers. We're going to make them out of lace today, lace and some eyelet lace. So I have some gathered lace here. I have some different flat laces, like this one is a flat lace. And I have this flat eyelet lace that I avocado dyed. We're going to work with that. And a couple of smaller ones like this one, and possibly this one if I have time. I'm going to make about 5 different flowers for you to see how they're done, but after that you'll have no problem making them. And once this part is done, this is not the hard part. Once this part is done, the hardest part is deciding how to finish them. But I will get started. Now, I've got my one of my button jars here, and you've seen me make this on a line as well, and I think some of you have made some of them. And I have 4 needles that are double threaded, like they have, it's not a single thread, it's doubled and knotted at the other end. I like to always have this many needles ready to go, so that when I sit down to make these, I can make a whole pile of them, because usually I can get 2, maybe 3 off of one needle, and then I rethread them all at once. And I'm not going to waste time threading them online, because again, that takes time, and my eyesight is getting where I need my magnifiers on for it, so I just as soon have them all threaded and ready to go. We all know how to thread a needle pretty much, I think, right? So most of these lace flowers, I say to work with about 12 inches. If it depends kind of on how wide your trim is. So in this case, it's about 2 inches wide. So I wouldn't go more than about 12 inches in length. And it's a flat lace. So I'm just going to cut off a little bit here. And so that's what I'm going to use for that one. When it's like now it's getting into, this one is a 1 inch wide. So I would go, I'm going to say about 8 or 9 inches. It's not near as big. And when I tell you this, I'm going to say you have to experiment because every trim is different. And then I'm going to make another one like this one. And I want it to be, it'll be about maybe 11 inches. And the reason for that is I'm going to trim it down a bit. I'm going to just take some of this excess off here on the raw edge. Right to the end. So this is going to give me a sort of a small, medium, and large flower. But I've trimmed this down to about 11 inches. This is about 12 inches. That's about 9. And then I'm going to take this little strip piece here and I'm going to cut it down to about 6 inches. And again, this is something that you're going to have to play around with to see if you want them to be a little bit more or a little bit less. I think 6 inches is plenty. And this, of course, goes in my snippet bag because I don't waste anything. You know that. And I think after that point, it's too small to make for a flower. So I've got sort of 4 different sizes on the go here. So I'm just going to get started. Now, when you're stitching these, because we're going to do a gathering stitch or one long stitch and then gather it up by hand. These are going to be the death of me. I recommend that you sew like a madman, not like a seamstress. Okay, it's not about how pretty your stitches look. It's not about how pretty and even they are. It's about getting the job done. And so I'm going to start, my needle is, or my thread is already knotted at the end, and it is a double thread because that gives you that extra strength. I don't recommend using just one thread, but if you are a more experienced sewer, then yes, by all means, if you feel comfortable using a single layer of thread, that's fine too. But if you're just starting out, I recommend a double until you get used to what you're doing. Now, this is a great project to do in front of the TV because you really don't have to concentrate. Once you've made a few of them, you'll know exactly how to do them. So I'm just going to start first at the very end, and it doesn't matter if you start on top or on the bottom. And I'm just going to stitch around it a couple of times. And the reason I do that, I hope you can see, the reason I do that is you don't want to get all the way to the other end of your fabric, and then you go to pull it to gather it up, and this breaks through, which it has on for me. So I started doing like a little knot thing at the beginning. And it doesn't matter how ugly it looks. You're not going to see this. This is going to be the center of the lace flower. So then I'm just going to go in at about 1/4 of an inch. And just start going in and out like a madman, not caring how good the stitches are, how long they are, how short they are. As long as you're catching the end of that fabric, I hope you can see me doing this. And there comes to the point where you can't load too much more on your needle, and just gently making sure you don't catch your thread and knot it somewhere. You may want to start with a shorter thread when you're first making these so that you don't get tangled up if you're not experienced. And I've spent 15 minutes undoing a knot when I got one, only because I was determined not to have to cut the thread and start over again. Probably should have. And yeah, you can see I'm just pulling it through the lace as I go along, and it's going to gather up a little bit as I'm doing this. And now this lace had a little bit of a bend in it, but that's okay. I'll catch around it. And I'm just going to keep going till the end. No rhyme or reason to your stitches, just in and out. I don't know about you, but this is how I used to hem jeans on a Friday night when I bought a new pair of jeans and we were going out to a dance. This is how I hemmed my jeans because I was short and all the jeans were too long for me. Well, I always got the job done fast. My mother used to say, well, I can see the stitches. And I said, yeah, but nobody else can. I'll be dancing. That was my idea. Okay, so once you've got it completely threaded with your running stitch, you would just slowly start to gather it up. And I'm doing this on the table, and I hope you can see well enough. And I'm just going to put the needle down for a second and just pull the thread. And don't worry if it looks like a scrunchy mess. And when you think you've got it gathered up enough, you can see that these don't quite meet. I just kind of take one end and put it on top about maybe 1/8 of an inch. And don't worry about this part if it doesn't line up. You're just catching it right here at the center from your beginning stitch, your first knot that you put in, about 1/2 inch. And I hold the two pieces. And while I'm holding it, I just gently pull the needle or the thread until I see that it's gathered up enough. And I've got my hand on those two little ends here. And you can lay it down, and don't worry if it's not pointed or fluffier on one side, because we're going to fix that. So once you've got it where you think it's pretty much exactly how you want the flower to gather up and look, then take your thread and go through those two overlapping pieces at the center and just pull the needle through. It's a little harder to do, and you have to be gentle because this thread will catch on everything and not on itself, which you don't want. And then come back from the back, being careful not to stab yourself, because when you bleed on the lace, it leaves a mark, although it will turn brown and be kind of grungy looking, but you'll always know that there's blood on it. And then just pull back up, and then do the same thing and go back down again, just in that one spot where you overlapped. Okay, and then turn the flower over and make a knot. Now, everybody who sews has a different method of how they knot their threads. I just hold it with my fingernail and pull it tight. And at this point, once you've got the knot in there, if I were working with lace, I might stitch it a couple more times and knot it again. But with this cotton eyelet, I'm confident that the knot is good enough. So I'm just going to trim it. And where those two ends are, if you can see, there's going to be a little bit of space where they didn't quite meet. I'm just going to take a dot of hot glue. Oh, I lost my glue stick. Oh, I don't know how come they make these chambers so short that your glue stick falls out. You would think that they'd have invented a better glue stick by now. And I'm not putting much glue. You can even do this with your fabric tack or whatever you use for fabric glues. You can also probably use a glue stick because it's just enough to hold it in place. And I'm just going to take that little nubby thing that was sticking out and trim it off. So now I can kind of shape my flower a little bit more. And my flower is ready to go. Now we're going to do some decorating on this afterwards. But for now, I'm just going to make a few different flowers, and then I will show you some stuff that you can do with them and how you can finish them. And that is the hardest decision to make, is how to finish them. So let's start with the next size down. So this one I had cut about 11 inches because I had trimmed that piece off, and it's not quite as big. I'll just put a quick knot in here. And do exactly the same thing. Catch it with my needle. And just knot it a couple of times through the edge so that I know that it's not running away on me anywhere and that it's holding sturdy. And then just in and out. Friday night special. Hemming your jeans. And no, I didn't use red thread on my jeans. I used black thread. Usually, my mother was pretty good with helping me out by hemming my jeans properly. But when I was in a hurry, that's how I did it. I did the same thing with skirts and dresses that were way too long on me at the time. And she would just shake her head at me. But it worked. And when you're desperate and you want to wear those new jeans or that new skirt, you do what you have to do. I mean, some people use masking tape, right? Or duct tape, I think, to hem their jeans in a hurry. And duct tape was actually good because you could put it through the wash several times before you actually had to consider hemming it. So you can see that as I'm talking to you, I'm putting this needle through and it is done already without too much effort. So again, I'm just going to lay it on the table. Let go of the needle and I'm just going to pull the threads. And sometimes you may end up with a little hole in the center. That's okay too, because we can fill them in with different finishing ideas, which I'm going to show you. So again, I'm just going to overlap onto that first piece about 1/8 of an inch, and I'm going to hold the two of them and gently pull the thread till I see that I like it, and then I'm going to catch the thread a bit and then stick my needle through the two pieces that are overlapped and push the needle to the back. And then give it a little tug. Sometimes it comes loose and just pull it together and then bring it back up and back down again into the back side. Now, when I say back side, sometimes you end up liking the flower better on the other side for some reason, and that's okay too. Now that I've got it pulled together, I can smoosh it around a little bit. I think that looks pretty good actually. And I'm just going to tie a knot. I hope this is enough for you to see. I should have probably worked with something like orange thread. I never really thought about that, but when it comes to tying a knot, it's pretty basic knot that I'm making. Some people put their needle in and wrap around and pull. I've never had that work well for me, so I just do the way I always have done it. And snip your thread. And then smoosh your piece around a little bit so that it's got a little bit more of a uniform gathering to it. And those two pieces are open here at the end. So I'm just going to take a little bit of glue. Now this time I can match it up not too bad. And I'm not putting very much. I'm just putting enough to just catch it. And I'm on to my next flower. So I'm going to just continue to do the same thing, but as I get to the end, we will go over it again. And I'm going to tell you about my vacation. Without going into too much detail, I never knew my biological father. And I didn't know till I was almost 12 years old that my stepfather was my stepfather. I always thought he was my father. So I've knotted it here at at the end, or wrapped it around a couple of times, and now I'm going to go back and forth. So back in the day, we didn't have DNA, we didn't have internet, so we didn't have access to a lot of information. And it wasn't until 2017 that I did my DNA. My mother took her story to her grave. She wasn't very forthcoming about the fact that she had me out of wedlock. And she did have a relationship with my biological father, but it was, you know, not very long. And he moved on. So in 2017, I did my DNA trying to find him. I knew I had an older brother who would be about 5 or 6 years older than myself. I wasn't hoping to find a father. I wasn't looking for a father or a father figure. Okay, sorry, I'm at the other end here. All right, so I'm just going to pull the needle through, put the needle down, and slowly pull the ends here. Overlap the two ends. And with my needle, once I think that that looks pretty good, I'm just going to pull it a little bit more, and I'm going to go through those two overlap pieces. This is a cute one, isn't it? It's a smaller one. And back again. My fingers are cramping up a little bit, so it makes it a little harder to go through. Okay, so I'm on the back side. I'm going to make my knot. So usually when I'm doing this in front of the TV, I'll just grab a bunch of lace and a ruler and my needle and thread and scissors, and I just make them. I don't even glue the edges until I have a pile of them done, and then, you know, I'll glue them afterwards. Now this one I kind of caught. There we go. Okay, so now I'm going to cut the thread. Find my two ends, dot of glue. You could easily make these with me. You could stop the video and go get your lace and trims and put them together. Now you can also make these with fabric strips, not just lace. Let's do the last one here. So going on to my father, I did my DNA in 2017. But he had died in 1998. Yeah, 1998. And he had children after me. And luckily, an aunt had told one of the kids that there might be a little girl. Because apparently I did meet my father once in my lifetime, but I won't go into that part of it either. And so about a month before I just randomly did my DNA, my youngest brother, who is, when I say youngest, he's 50. I'm 62, so there's 12 years difference between us. He had done his DNA. So within 2 weeks of my DNA being, once it was in the mail and done, within 2 weeks, I found out I had a direct match. And it didn't take me long to figure out, because his wife had done a family tree. And so within seconds I said, okay, if this is my brother, that means I have 2 other brothers in the same family. And so yes, it turned out I have 3 younger brothers. Now he is the youngest at 50. And the next one is 55, and the oldest is 57. Yeah, 57. I'm 5 years older than he is. So my biological father had met somebody and married her, and then 5 years later started his family and moved on. And I never knew him. I never saw him. But my youngest brother, Alex is his name. He came to visit me in 2019. He came to visit me. And I got to FaceTime with his two sons, who are grown men. And one of them, Connor, is getting married on Saturday, and he invited me to the wedding. And the wedding was supposed to be 2 years ago in 2020, but COVID hit, and so they had to postpone the wedding. And so I've waited all this time to go to his wedding, but I'm pretty excited because I'm going to get to meet, well, I was supposed to get to meet two other brothers, but I'm only going to get to meet one, maybe, because he is the one that is not quite on board with this. So I'm hopeful. I'm got my fingers crossed and hoping. Okay, I don't want to get emotional, but I'm hoping that he will come through and I can at least meet him. I hold no claim to this family. I just, you know, we share the same DNA. And so it would just be fun to learn a little bit more about who I am. And, sorry, I went and pulled the thread through there. So you can see this is really tiny here. And I'm just closing off the back. So anyway, I'm going to meet these other family members, and there are lots of nieces and nephews that I can meet, and hopefully I'll get to meet them all. The youngest brother, Alex, when he came to Winnipeg, he came to Winnipeg and then came out to see me in the country in Manitoba. The first time I saw him, it was incredible. We have the same eyes. Him and I don't look a lot alike. I look like the middle brother the most, or we look the most alike. But we all have the same eyes. And when I looked into Alex's eyes, I truly saw myself for the first time, and I saw my soul. I have fair skin and blonde hair, or had blondish red hair, and blue eyes, and everybody in my family had brown hair and brown eyes and olive colored skin. So when I did find out that something was up, it was just a question of who was I, and it's been that way all my life. And when I finally got to see Alex, I knew who I was. So yeah, that's why I'm going to Vancouver for a week's vacation, is to go to the wedding. Now you can see this little flower is a little bit wonky donkey, but that's okay. We're making distressed flowers, right? And so this is a nice size. It's nice and flat. This will sit nicely on a page if you're doing a journal page, or it could sit on a tab on the end of a page. If you had a tab sticking out, it's just a cute little size. And once we decorate it up and fix it up, it'll really look nice. So far I've got 4 made here, right? Now we're going to make one. Since I did that in flat, I'm going to use this gathered lace. Now this gathered lace has 2 layers. And I'm just going to take my scissors. I'm going to start at this end, I think. And I'm going to cut this off because it's too thick here with the folded over edges for this to gather up nicely. It's just too chunky and heavy and doesn't flow very nicely. So I'm going to cut it off, but I'm not going to cut it off right at the edge. I'm going to cut it about 1/8 of an inch longer. So if you can see here, you can see that I'm just cutting a little bit more off of it, and I'll explain that after. But as you're cutting these with the gathering in them, if they've got a really good gather, you're getting more length on your lace. So I don't recommend cutting it into a 12-inch piece or a 10-inch piece until you've actually cut it off of the sewn edge. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It's going to be raggy looking on one side probably because you're cutting through the gathers. And it doesn't take long. You can see how much, like here's where we started, but now you can see how much lace we have going past that. So that's why I recommend that you don't cut it until you know what you've got and what length you want. In camera here. So I'm just going to take this blue lace, for example, and it's not as wide as that 2-inch. It's about 1.5 inches wide. So again, I'm going to go about 10 inches with this one. And you just have to play around. If one time 10 inches long doesn't work for you, go 11 or go 9. It's entirely up to you, but just test it and try. I sort of go 12, 10, 8, and 6, but it depends on what you're working with. Because sometimes if you're working with a thin lace, it's going to gather up really nicely. But if you're working with thicker eyelet lace where it's more fabric, you're going to run into problems where it's a little bit thicker. So you don't need... You need more gathers to make it lay flat. So you may want to even go to 13 inches or 14 inches, but play around and see what works best for you. So this is about 1 inch wide. So I'm going to go about 9 inches, I think. Yeah, maybe 8 inches, 8 inches. I just have a feeling. So this is going to make 2 little flowers, and I still have enough thread on this one. So I'm going to make this small one. So knot on the end. How are we doing for time? Oh, I think we're okay still. Okay, knot on the end just to catch it. And then in and out all the way to the end. So yeah, I will tell you more about the experience after. I'm not one to do much talking about my personal life, but this is kind of an exciting moment for me. I do have, Papa was a bit of a rolling stone, just to put it nicely. And yeah, if you follow that song, you'll know what I mean. And he was already nearly 40 when I was born. And so, that's a whole lifetime before me, that of possibilities. And my mother used to be the nanny for his for a son that would be about 5 or 6 years older than I am, and that's the one I was looking for. Okay, so I've gathered this up. See how fast it goes when you start chatting? Needle down. I'm just going to pull this together. Overlap the two and hold it with my thumb and just gently pull the thread until I see that I like how it's turned out. And then holding the thread a little bit and holding the two overlapped, I'm just going to put the needle through. And that looks pretty good. Just going to smooth it out a bit more. Okay, now I can catch this again. I'm sort of going underneath my finger with the needle to catch this. And then back down again and turn it over a knot. Now, because this is lace compared to what we were doing before, I'm going to catch it another time. Actually, I'm just going to go right through it again. Back up. And back down, and then knot. And that's just so that in case the knot pulls through one of the holes in the lace, because sometimes you're going through the actual little holes in here instead of actually going through the flower. But doing it twice certainly will catch it the second time. I think I did it 3 times. I can't remember. Okay, so that flower is done. I'm pretty much at the end of my thread here, so I'm just going to put that away and take another one. So you can see how many flowers you do. I'm using about 15 inches in length of thread. But if you're new to this, I recommend you do a shorter thread only because it's very easy for it to tangle up. So this is kind of a sort of a medium size again. So I'm just going to catch this with my... And sometimes, because I'm concerned of it going through the holes, I will just split this thread open, the 2 threads, and go between them. This way I know it's looped right through and isn't going anywhere. But just to make sure, I go around again. And I don't worry about whether the knot looks ugly on there at all, because you're not going to see it by the time we're finished. And then just in and out till we get to the other side. So just to give you further information, yeah, my mother used to be the nanny for one of his children, and that's how they met. There's so much to the story, I can't even go on to tell you it all. So that was the child I was looking for based on the surname and based on the information I had, and never found him. But I have since found a brother that's only 14 months older than I am from another woman. And this is not the same mother of the first child that my mother babysat or was the nanny for. So that means there are 2 older brothers that I know of. Well, one I know of, one is still yet to be found. And then there's the 3 younger brothers. But my father also had a career for many years in Europe in World War II. And so there's possibility, you know, he was a young man in World War II. And like I said, there's 20 years of possibilities based on how old I am and how old he was. And just assuming that he could have started when he was 20. You do the math and you figure out how many kids there are. So we don't know for sure. We know that there's at least 5 boys with the possibility of more. And then myself, so far I'm the only girl, and I'm hoping that I'll eventually find a sister. Okay. So I've come to the end here, pulled my thread, and I'm overlapping. And I have my thumb over top of this overlap, and I'm just going to push my needle through. Somehow I got caught here. Oh, I see. Okay. And going through the 2 overlapped pieces. It's a little harder right now because the thread is so long. Okay, pulling gently to, and then I'm holding the thread underneath, but I'm poking the needle back through. And then back down. This one I'm going to do a couple of times because there's lots of holes in here. So that's my story. I could write a book. Someday I may. I don't know. And I will tell you more as I feel more comfortable to talk about it, but that's what I'm going to do, is meet another brother, I hope, and enjoy myself at my nephew's wedding and get to meet a few other nieces and nephews. So there won't be a video next Sunday, and there may not be a video on Thursday for Thrifty Thursday. I'm going to try, but my flight leaves very early on Thursday morning, so I'm going to bed early on Wednesday. So that's tomorrow, and I haven't even started packing yet. So yeah, I'm already in trouble. But we're making flowers, so what? You know, that's okay too, right? Okay, now I could go on and make flowers forever and chit-chat, but I think you've gotten to the point where you know what it is I'm doing here. And I'm going to cut my thread, put this aside. So we're done with needles, we're done with the lace. I just have to glue this one little piece. Now this would be a great mass make Monday. We'll have to do that someday and make flowers together. But we're going to be making lots of different flowers. So, and just catch it with the glue. The glue gun is a hot glue gun. I'm just so used to doing this, it doesn't bother me. But you know, when you're using a glue gun, you know the rules. You know what it's like. Okay, so I have a bunch of these flowers made. Now it comes time to decorating them. There are so many methods, but it wouldn't be fun to do so many methods unless you have so many flowers. So I couldn't wait for you. I went ahead and made some of these before the camera was on, just so that I wouldn't bore you to tears. Oops, there's a very good hint, isn't it? And so I have a huge collection here to play with, which is why I suggest that you make lots of them, because this is the hardest part, is deciding how to decorate them. Now I have a string of pearls here. And, you know, you can find pearl necklaces very easily at garage sales or thrift shops, or even from your own jewelry box. And these are pearls that are movable. So you want to look for a strand where they are individual beads. And these ones are knotted in between, which really means they're better quality bead, but... and then I would just stitch them in. Now, I'm not going to stitch them on camera. And there's a number of reasons why. It's because I can never decide until I actually need them. But it is just using a needle that will go through your bead hole and putting them on just like a button. So that is how I did this one. I put 3 pearls in the center. And yeah, this was done with a piece of torn fabric, doing exactly the same thing. And I pulled the threads out, and I'll do more of that in another video, but I concentrated on the lace today. And I pulled the threads out, so that gives it a nice, rough little feathery finish around the edges. So yeah, you can glue 3 pearls onto here. You can also get out a jar of buttons. This is my jar of vintage buttons that I hoard. And it is so hard for me to part with buttons. So it has to be a really special thing. Like, I love this one. And it's kind of an olivey green, which would make a really cute center on there. And all I have to do is sew it on just the same way you sew on a button, and it's done, right? So I'm going to get these pearls out of the way. And there are different buttons you could use. Look at this sparkly one. If I put that in the center, of this blue one, but how would I ever part with that button? It's gorgeous too, just like that, right? And then, oh, look at this one. This one has all the little bumps in it. Just like a flower, right? Look at that. Isn't that the cutest thing? So it's a matter of playing around. So buttons is another option. If you're not using the pearls, buttons is another option. But what about if you have some old vintage earrings? Now, these earrings have the clip-on backs, just like that. And all I did was I took a pair of pliers and I broke it off. And I can do it right in front of you here, because I know I'm going to use these probably. I'm not as attached to earrings as I am to buttons. So I'm just grasping the back of the clip and I'm just going to bend back and forth until it comes off. So visit Grandma and break off ask her for her old jewelry. Maybe you have a stash of it, or go to an antique shop. There's always, and they're not expensive. You can get a pair of earrings for $1 or $2, and you can sometimes make a deal with the vendors, whoever's selling, that maybe you can get a whole bunch of them for more. If you go online, you can get bags of them. You can get mismatched ones for using in your art, but wait till you see this. Isn't that pretty? Like, wow, right? But now, see, this is why I can never decide. So I usually wait until I'm actually going to use these flowers. And so I have an abundance of them. I'm not going to bring them all out, but I have an abundance of them. And then I put them together. And so here's the problem. Okay, so I showed you this, but what if I did this and stitched this on top and then put that on there? Like, that's 2 layers. Isn't that just beautiful? Now, what if I did 3 layers and then sewed pearls on here? Where did my pearls go? Here they went. So all I'm doing is taking the needle and thread and going through all 3 of these. It just doesn't stop, right? Like, doesn't that look beautiful? And it's so full with all the 3 layers. And it started out like this. But what if I want, here, like this one, with maybe a light blue on top? Or just the 2 layers and that earring on top. Look at that. Isn't that gorgeous? Like, the colors are amazing. And there's nothing to this. You saw how I put these together. There's nothing to making these. Needle and thread and a little bit of lace. And so they can get really, really elaborate. Now, I could put this one on top. And all I have to do is take a needle and thread and go from the bottom and do a couple of stitches to hold it together. You can also hot glue them on, but that just gives you more bulk. And the reason I like to do a needle and thread is because that pulls it together nice and tight like this. And it just gives you more dimension. Now, I did this one on purpose. What if you have a flower and by the time you're done, it's curled up a little bit because maybe you pulled too tight or you didn't have enough length for the size of your flower, you know, because this is where you're going to experiment. These become sort of like a little cuppy layer on your flowers. So I could take this one, put this on top, and put this one in the middle. Bam. Isn't that cute? So it gives you a little bit more of a rounded cup look to it. Like, it, you know, you've seen flowers like a daffodil, for example, is like that, where it has the layers. Or I can do that together. Got some threads in there. And gather it all together and still add that in. Although this is a little bit chunky, I think, for this, but it's endless. And why stop at 3 layers? You can have 4 layers if you want. It just depends on the size you're making and how many you want to put together. And these flowers, like I said, they can be used on your journal covers. If you had a journal cover, you could do a kind of a collage of flowers. Maybe that's a little bit too much for that one, but let's just take it down to that. And maybe you've got, here's a nice medium-sized one and another small one. And a smaller one up here with a white center. And maybe you can do that. And so you can collage, add a few silk leaves or make your own leaves out of felt or out of fabric. And you've got a journal cover. So you can collage. I mean, this isn't the exact way I would do this one, but this just gives you an idea of how you can incorporate them on the cover of your journal. Now, if you wanted to do, I just happen to have this handy. If you want to do them on a tag, you can just glue them down, depending on which sizes you wanted to put or what colors. And I would do the centers in them first. If you're doing single layer, it's not too big to add onto a tag like this. It will be, cause a little bit of thickness in your journals, but maybe this could be a tag that's on the outside of your journal. You can do small ones. You can do a collage of small ones. Are you getting excited? Here's that little one. Doesn't that look cute? Not much to that at all. And just put some pretty centers in the center. You may, in this case, you may want to add like a small flat gemstone or perhaps some tinier beads. To give you an example, I have this bag of beads here. These are half the size, approximately. Let's just take out a few. They're going to start rolling all over on me. I see the cream ones here, so if I put 3 in the center, and I like to use 3, but I always say to check your needle first to make sure that they can handle the size of hole in the bead, because you may want to use a smaller needle. Okay, they are rolling around on me, so I won't be able to lift this up, but hopefully you can see how I've done this. Well, I can try and lift it up. I'm so used to having a few beads go rolling away on me anyway, so let's try and lift this up a little closer. Maybe you have some pretty rhinestones that you can add in, some blingy things, the rolls of bling that you get on from the dollar stores. So there's lots of options of how you can add those onto a project as well. And then I'm going to show you one more final little thing. Just get these before they roll away on me completely. Oh, I want to show you this too. This is just a very plain little pocket that I can add a couple of these flowers onto it and change the look completely of your project. And again, instead of having something really bulky, because this is already getting a little bit thick, I would just put something very flat, like a flat backed pearl or a gemstone that would go in there nicely, or some rhinestones. Or if you're really good at doing some embroidery, you can make some nice embroidered circles using some wool or thread. You can also take, of course I don't have the right color on the table, you can take some nice fibers and fill in the center with a few little eyelash fibers. So it's just a matter of playing around. And then I'm going to show you one more thing. Okay, so remember, we cut this off with a little bit of an edge. We left an edge here. Now, I'm just going to trim this straighter. And I'm going to start putting a little bit of glue on here. And folding it over into itself, and I'm going to start to roll. Can you see this? Now I'm going to put a little bit of glue on that piece there. Just a little dot of glue. And you can use your, and I'm just going to wrap this around. Oop. And I'm going to do it again. Now this is where you got to be careful because it can get hot, and I want to make sure that it's nice and flat at the bottom here. I'm sticking to it and my finger's cramping. I'm just going to cut this off. And this is why you never throw anything away. And just keep gluing. And now I'm at the point where I can put glue on here, onto the lace itself, and just keep rolling it around. Somebody's having an aha moment when you know exactly what I'm doing, right? My glue stick's going to fall out again. Just wrapping it around on itself, keeping it flat on the one side. And you can play around with this with your lace, your gathered lace. It won't work as easily with the flat lace. You really need to have the gathered edge lace. Until you run out. So now I have this little thing. I hope you can see that. So I've gathered all that rough edge that we'd cut off, and this is the end of the lace, this part here of the lace. Hope you can see. So it's like a little florally thing. And let's get this out of the way. Let's get this out of the way. And let's get the original flower, or the original lace. Is that it? Yeah, that's it. Okay, so there's the flower that we made from the one size of lace. And there's the flower we made from the other size of lace. And now if I take this and put it into the center, you have a really cute little flower. Now, this works really good the deeper inside it can go. So I wouldn't use it on this small lace. I'd use it with two bigger ones. But doesn't that make a really pretty flower? Now, the only problem with this is that this is very, very solid, so it is not flattening down any more than this. So I would stitch this down first really tight, the 2 layers or 3 layers, depending on what you want to use. Stitch them down really tight together first, and then hot glue this onto the top, and you have a really, really pretty floral. Now, you may have other ribbons where you can coordinate them a little bit better. This probably needs a little bit of pink underneath here, but I think that's too much bulk, depending on what you're going to use this for, of course. And this might be a little too small. Let's see, let's try this one. So you're just getting a hint of blue here, and then that in the center. I hope you can see it. So to show you how I use these on other flowers, I do have some here where I've completed it, and the center is that flower, or the edges, and then this has 1, 2 layers. So for this flower, when I was done, I put a little felt, I hot glued a little piece of felt on the back to give it a little flat base. And now this can be glued onto anything. And because it's only done with thread and lace and felt on the back, you can put these onto a hairband for a little girl. You can put them onto clothing for children. You can just hand stitch them on. They're all stitched. The only part that's glued in is the center, that center piece that is like this. That's the only thing that's glued on, but it's hot glued on there pretty good. So this would make a nice applique on a little dress. I have some done in yellow too, and these are variegated yellow because I painted this lace. I don't like white lace. I always find it needs some kind of coloring to it. So these ones are done in the yellow. And this one here is done with the eyelet lace. And then this time I took the floral center and I turned it upside down. So you have a nice flat rounded finish there. So I hope this gets you excited to make some flowers. Like, look at this one. Isn't that pretty? It's 3 layers again. So it's got the wide lace on the bottom, a different lace in the middle. And then I think this was probably from this lace, the edge that I cut off. It could have been a completely different lace too. I'm not sure. I don't remember. But yeah, isn't this fun? So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you're going to make some. Like I said, sit down and make lots because and so you want to make more and more just so you can switch them out and have so many different options, and then center them with different things in the center, layer them, not layer them. And again, you may have them just sitting in a box until you have a project that you want to actually use them on. I never got to this lace, but this kind of incorporates both colors in the lace. So if you can imagine this in the center, how pretty that one would be too. And yeah, this is why I can't decide. I can't decide until I'm actually going to use it. So again, I hope you enjoyed this. Like I said, I'm not sure if I will get to do my Thrifty Thursday on before I go or not. If not, then it'll be a week from Sunday before I actually sit down and do another video. But this will keep you busy. I'm sure it'll keep you busy. And these flowers are the simplest of flowers we're going to make. They're only going to get more and more elaborate and more fun as we go along. So this is the new series. It will be Flowers and Embellishments. And it's just the beginning. So I hope you enjoyed it. I wish all of you a very creative day and a creative week. And I look forward to seeing you and telling you the latest scoop after my vacation. And we'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.